Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Look Forward. I'm your host, Jay. I'm here with my co-host, Brad.
I'm really upset that you put me on the red side of this new graphic because it makes me feel like I need to be the conservative side of this podcast.
You do.
That we have here.
Well, I mean, then nothing has changed, has it really? Brad, obviously the hardcore conservative on here.
Oh yeah, super hardcore conservative. Like I said, let's get rid of federal income tax, but also go to war with every country on the planet and prove our dominance.
Brad, known back the bluer and Jan's sixth apologist. He was like, "Why wasn't it January 5th and 7th?" Like, wow, it's a really personal stakes you're putting up there, Brad. Yes, this is our new framed-in, very professional-looking setup. So, it may change from time to time as I get better at this, but this is where we are right now. All right, so let's jump right into it, aesthetics aside. So, first off, big story that just kind of devolved over the week. Which is really interesting. Like,
I love this
bold
story. I love this story because it is the first and only time I think that we've ever all collectively come together and supported an initiative that Donald Trump is bringing forward to the masses.
Finally. In a new statement that he would have posted on Twitter himself if the account was not permanently suspended for inciting violence. This is, of course, written by the Daily Beast.
Say to put on his blog.
That no one reads. Trump declared, quote, "If we don't solve the presidential election fraud of 2020, which has been thoroughly and conclusively documented," interesting, Republicans will not be voting in 22 or 24. It's the single most important thing for Republicans to do. So basically, he pushed out this idea that, dear Republican Party, like actual politicians, you need to kowtow to me and make sure that you go along with the big lie, or I will tell Republican voters, my sheep, to not vote in the midterm election and in 2024, which is the time that he would run, which would be really weird.
Very much so.
But okay, so he's taking the Lin Wood approach to politics, which, if people remember, shot the Republican Party in the foot during the last election, causing them to lose the Senate. I've already seen Republicans, these are the more like crazy QAnon folks, have already been like, "We're not voting. They're right, man. We're not voting." I feel like that's going to spread throughout the party pretty heavily. Now there.
Oh no.
Don't come back, please. Now, there's obviously issues with this, right? Like some serious issues, which is, will the GOP follow suit and say, okay, we will kowtow, we will push the big lie, we will do all this bullshit, because they obviously don't want voters to not vote in the midterms and in 2024. Or will they tell Trump to go pound sand? My guess is the former, not the latter. Which is a problem because now you're going to have even more mainstream Republicans buying into this horse shit.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Here's the problem though, is that so on the local level and on the state level, you can run like sham investigations into this thing,
right?
But Republicans don't control any levers of government right now in the elected body on the federal level. So they don't have agenda making power. Like, they can sit there and be like, "We want to investigate this," and Democrats will be like,
"Nah,
no,
I'm good.
I think not."
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what the Republican Party actually does here. Like, I don't have any faith that they won't just go full bore into like the horse shit. Like, I really do think they will. My question is, what is his end game? Right? Like, obviously it's to get the party to kowtow, right? Like, that's the obvious part. But he always is running sort of a less obvious, even dumber move. Like, that's kind of his thing. And I can't help but think that if he is surrounded by people who think that he should be reinstated as president,
right.
If he doesn't get that, or like a real concerted effort that he still won't call their bluff and just be like, you know what, fuck it, don't vote. Because I think he's even willing to blow shit up for 2022, like for real, so that they will kowtow for 2024. But the problem is, if you blow shit up for 2022, you might make it so bad that Democrats are in a better position going into 2024. So
that's what I'm saying. Like you might inadvertently hand them the ability to actually run their agenda, which would be incredibly popular. Like once things actually start getting implemented, and then people will be like, why would we vote for you guys again? Like, look at all the cool things that are happening.
Right. And that's what I'm wondering, right? Like you never interrupt a guy, you never interrupt an enemy destroying themselves, right? Like that's, the Democrats are like, no, please don't, But I do wonder, how far does that power dynamic go? Like, does it really push that far that the Republican Party is like, we're not going to do that? Or they just don't do enough because his ask is too insane, right? I don't know.
Honestly, I don't see what happens. Honestly, I don't think this changes a lot. Like the fucking nutters that have been on about this stuff are just going to be more on about it, and the quote unquote normal Republicans who are, who haven't really given this much thought aren't probably going to. Mitt Romney. That's it. Like, it's literally
this number is not. This is not a long list.
Yeah. No, I don't think this really changes a whole lot. And plus, like, we're counting on Trump to like follow through on something, which he never does. So like that, like he's just talking big in this situation. I don't really think it's going to lead to much. I think it's funny. Like, I think it's hilarious, especially
it's
given
super funny
recent history of, like you mentioned, like the Georgia Senate race where they're like, don't vote, it's bullshit. And Democrats are like, thanks for the 2 Senate seats. Like, you could have easily won these, but all right.
Right. Like, it was a really hard fought thing that the Democrats won both seats. Like, they might have pulled one off, but like the chances of them pulling off 2 was crazy high. But they've got a lunatic like Lynn Wood who was promoting that shit. And now you've got your biggest gun promoting this. Which
Trump kind of promoted that before, like while he was president. He just like, I don't know if you should even bother with this shit. I'm just like, all right,
all right, dude. Like,
it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for him.
Turns out it did for us.
Yeah.
Like, you are dumb.
No, but that's, like I said, it's completely idiotic to actually go suggest that your constituents don't vote. This is some like fucking Rose Twitter shit, just proving once again that the horseshoe is a thing that fucking exists. So
it absolutely is. And like this idea, which by the way, boy, are we going to talk about that later. You guys ready to test a theory that you had? Okay, Rose Twitter, go right ahead. You're about to have one. Let's see how that works out. It's not gonna, but just put AOC anywhere. She'll work. Okay. Idiots. But like this is, I know there's been a lot of like, this is go time for the Republican Party, like, shit or get off the pot kind of thing. But they really are going to have to figure out, are you just going to be this guy's bitch until he dies? Or at some point do you go, nah, fuck this guy? And I feel like there's just not enough people in the Senate for Republicans that are willing to do that. I think they're still terrified of this guy.
But their actual problem, like the problem that this kind of lives at the core of, like this is more of the symptomatic of a symptom of the real problem that's in the party, is that they don't have a policy agenda that they can run on. So the only thing that they can run on is this bullshit. Like they can't run on, cutting taxes, and they can't run on like actual like things that they want to do. So all they have to run on is scams and grievance and, the same bullshit that Trump basically ran on for 4 years in office once he got his tax cuts, and that's it.
Right.
That's about all he accomplished.
We're out of ideas, guys. Like, we got them all. Yeah. What'd you do? Lower taxes for rich people? Yep. All right. Well, we're done here.
Yeah. Lower taxes for rich people, got rid of the individual mandate, and that's it. And yelled about a wall. We built a wall. No, you fixed some fence. No, we built a wall. No, you repaired some fence.
Yeah,
that's what you did.
Where's the wall? The Mexicans took it. Like, I don't know. It's not.
No, but that's their actual problem. Is again they've gone so far to being a party of rhetoric that they don't have ideas anymore. So like you have nothing to pivot to away from this. Like you have to just kind of live around this space. And the really the only ideas they have is to be anti-Democrat. Like that, whatever. Yeah. Like, what do the Democrats want to do? We want to do the opposite. Like that's right. Literally that's all they are.
That's why That's why, people are, they're so mad at, like. I understand the argument. I think it's a silly one, but I understand where it comes from. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what is happening in this country. When people are like, the Democrats want the Republicans to win, I'm like, one, no, they don't. Okay, no, they don't. They hate. Trust me. Democrats in Congress hate the fact that Republicans get into office, wreck everything, and then they're responsible for fixing everything, which cuts away from their chance of actually doing anything new, right? They hate that shit. They don't enjoy. Who the hell enjoys like making something, letting a kid smash it to smithereens, and then rebuilding it? Like, no one enjoys that. That's dumb.
Yeah. Like it reminds me of, so like my son really likes demolishing things that I build with him. So like he likes to build stuff
like
and
Legos
just
and
knock
shit.
it over. Yeah, so like we'd build like, is like when he was younger, we'd build like his Mega Blocks up, and I'd help build a really cool tower. And then as soon as he saw, oh shit, there's a tower up, he'd just come over and knock it down. Like that. That's literally what Republicans are when they get power.
Because one, they're fucking children, right? Like they basically are just children in their dad's suits, showing up to work every day. But like because of that, like that idea of not having actual policies, right? Like Democrats don't actually enjoy that, right? Like I see people say that, the Democrats want them to win. They don't. The problem is this nation is full of people with the memory of an ant, which is ridiculous, or like a gnat, I guess, which is a problem. The other thing is you do have a lot of Democrats who they don't want Republicans to win, but they're not as they're nowhere near as progressive as we need them to be. Nowhere near. And I'm not even talking about like being as progressive as like your AOCs or the Squad. I mean like being as progressive as like Kamala Harris, right?
More on that to come.
Yes, right? Like, so it's like you don't even have people who are that progressive. So like the thing is, Republicans love the fact that Democrats get back in power right after they do their tax cuts and fuck the economy up and start wars and everything else. They're not that upset that Democrats get in power because they know that the American public will blame Democrats the second they forget that Democrats haven't been in power for more than 9 minutes. They get blamed. Democrats try to fix everything. They undercut all of the shit. They get to run against it for 4 to 8 years. They love that shit because they don't have, like you said, they don't have actual policies. So when people say that Democrats actually enjoy losing to Republicans, it's actually the opposite. Like Republican voters don't like losing, of course. No voters want their opponent to win, right? Like that's not a thing. But I'm not sure Republican politicians get that mad. Like you think Fox News is mad that there's a Democratic president? Fuck no. They don't have to eat dick for 4 to 8 years, dude. They get to go in the opposition. They hated that shit.
Yet they still do.
Yeah, I know. Look, the media still is like, well, I don't know. This is like boring guy as president. Isn't that interesting? We miss the old guy. Like the old guy almost got you killed. Like, but it's like an abusive relationship. But yeah. Fox News does better as the opposition. Like they don't do nearly as well as just repeating the talking points in the White House.
It's why they still portray themselves as the opposition, even when Republicans were in power. Like
right. It's because that is who they are, right? They are fundamentally, that's who they are. Like there was a book, maybe about a year ago or so, it came out. Actually, it was before the end of before the pandemic, so maybe 2 years, about how the Republican Party basically got largely rid of their policy writers, like in Congress. They largely got rid of their policy writers. One, because they could just go to Alec, right, who writes a lot of their policies, but they got rid of them for Alec people and replaced most of their people with marketing people. Because they were just marketing these ideas of lower taxes, marketing these ideas of being in the opposition, because that was more important to how they sounded than what they were actually talking about. They fundamentally are not policy. They're not a policy party anymore. And it is doing nothing but damage overall to democracy. But the fact that no one really acknowledges, like, y'all don't really have any fucking policies is a problem. What did Trump run on against Biden? Name a policy, dude. Name one.
Yeah. You can't.
Baby.
You literally cannot.
Their platform was what that guy is doing. Like, remember that? Like, what's the new platform for 2020? And they were like, whatever Trump's platform was in 2016. That's literally what the Republican Party said.
And Trump's platform wasn't like, here's what I'm going to do if you reelect me. It's this guy's going to ruin it if you elect him. Like that was literally his stance essentially.
Right. And so, I know people are like, insane. That's what the Democrats are doing. But Biden had policies, dude. Like, a lot of them. Like, a ton of fucking policies. Actual, like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, which they're still fighting to get put in place, right? More on that later. But, like, to say that they want to lose or they don't have policies is exactly the opposite. It's actually the great thing about the Republican Party right now is they have convinced people to believe that, like, they don't exist, right? It's like the devil's greatest trick. It's like, it's not us who doesn't believe in policies. It's the Democrats. And people are like, well, I guess it's the Democrats. Like, no, it's not. It's not. They can't get the shit through, or they have people who are not as progressive as we want them to be. Those are fair criticisms, but they do. It also goes back to what we.
It also goes back to what we talked about with the media last week. Is that the stance of we don't have ideas has somehow become acceptable as an opposing idea, essentially.
Right.
Like
that's not
Republicans don't have ideas, and media's like, this is fine. Like, they're like, the Republicans just oppose the Democrats, and this is a rational and correct position for a political party to have. And I'm like, it really isn't though.
Right.
If you're just there to be obstructionists,
that's all they're there
don't
for.
Be there.
Yeah. Why are you even there? They're just like, the moon's made of cheese. Yeah, but we went to the moon. Yeah, it's made of cheese. But we went there, it's dirt and rocks. They're like, yeah, but cheese. And you like cut to CNN. Both sides say the moon's made of different things. That's the headline? What the fuck? Like, yeah. So it's maddening, but this is very true. This is absolutely accurate.
But again, like I said, I wholly endorse the Trump strategy of Republicans fucking staying home. And that pains me to say, because you know me. I'm the guy that wants to make voting as easy as fucking possible, because I firmly believe that Democrats would win on their ideas if everyone had an equal playing field to vote on. I don't really want that at this point anymore, because if you're too stupid, if you're too stupid to continue to blindly follow the Republican Party, falling down the cliff as they are right now, then you probably shouldn't be voting at this point.
Is it that you support a marketplace of ideas, Brad?
Sure.
That's a Nazi term. Look, he's got the red. He's got the red next to him for a reason. You know who else supports a marketplace of ideas, Brad? What's that idiot? What's the guy who didn't know what Occam's razor was this week?
I thought you were about to transition to the next story. I'm like, wait, I was like, that seems awful slanderous to talk about Colin Powell.
No,
it was Dave Rubin.
He didn't know what Occam's
does not know what Occam's razor is. Yeah, he thinks it's Murphy's law.
Yeah. That guy is big dumb. Like, he's big dumb.
He's very stupid.
Ideas, guys. This is a marketplace of ideas. Yeah, I don't like that guy. I don't like Dave Rubin. Not a fan. He tried to make the switch to being a right-wing asshole for money, and it was obvious. And you're a pathetic fucking loser, dude. Like, you really are. It's kind of sad. All right. Here's a person who's not a pathetic loser, but you have a right to give him a little bit of the business. I will preface the story by saying that. Colin Powell, first black U.S. Secretary of State, dies from COVID while battling cancer. That's an important...
And battling being 84 as well.
Yes, and also being 84 years old. Pretty important little factoids to add at the end of that headline. Brad, now, you are on the red side of the screen. Justify why it was okay for the deep state to kill Colin Powell before he could expose Comet Pizza.
I just can't believe that Trump didn't do it while he was in office. Why he didn't use his power to murder Colin Powell. Colin Colin Powell is possibly the best example of how far into simplicity and idiocracy our discourse has gone. And I don't just mean on the Republican side of the ledger. I mean it on
completely
far left extremes as well. Yeah. So, but yeah, like I said, so Colin Powell is a figure deserving of nuance. But again, you have people on the far left that are just like, oh, he was fucking terrible because he got us into Iraq. Not at all what happened, actually. Like he was very vehemently against going to Iraq, but did his duty as what he thought his duty was once the decision had been made by his boss, essentially. And
right, and he was also lied to. He was also lied to, right? Like
also very very much the case.
Kind of a big deal, guys. Like you can't just ignore that, right? Like look. One, I'm going to discuss Colin Powell, and especially when it comes to the run up to the Iraq War, because I think it's important. And I think it is part of his legacy, and he does have to live with that, right? But I do think, again, like you said, it deserves a bit of nuance. You can't just pretend certain things aren't true because they don't fit a narrative. But also, then I'm going to tell my favorite Colin Powell story. So Colin Powell, like, look, he was clearly lied to. We know this, right? This is a part of American history at this point. He was lied to about these weapons of mass destruction. He went up in front of not NATO, Jesus, United Nations, and held out the fucking like, oh, here's the fucking shit, like, here's weapons of mass destruction. This uranium, and like he was made a fool of, basically, right? Mm-hmm. They knew that this guy, there was a reason they used him. He was above credit, like his credibility was so fucking high. It was above reproach. Like, Colin Powell said this. Oh shit, this must be real. And by the way, that is true.
They knew they couldn't. Sorry to interrupt you. They knew they couldn't roll up to the UN with fucking Donald Rumsfeld, like talking about this shit.
The guy who puts Splenda in our coffee, that guy's putting fucking holes in our brains. Knock it off. By the way, it does. And he is responsible for that. A lot of people don't know that. Like Donald Rumsfeld is responsible for getting Splenda on the market, or aspartame on the market. But like he was above reproach, right? And that's not just a right-wing thing, right? Not Republicans were like, we love Colin Powell, fucking yeah. Like everyone respected him, dude. You didn't have to agree with like the militarization of the United States, which is a huge deal. You didn't have to agree on whether we should have gone to the Gulf War or whether or not, like, what we're doing, is the strategy going to be right or whatever. None of that is relevant to that particular part of the conversation, which is, if Colin Powell said it, people were like, oh shit, this guy is on the level, because he always was on the level. One of my biggest regrets is that he didn't leave the Republican Party early enough and run for president. Mm-hmm. He could have won. Like Colin, that's how, by the way, people forget that. I know a lot of young people, you just started looking at politics 9 minutes ago, and I get it, like, you're young. You're in a dork like me listening to C-SPAN when you were like a kid. But, or maybe you were, I don't know. You two are not getting laid. But, it's true. But, Colin Powell was seen as, this guy is going to be the first black president. Like, it was like, people are like, if he runs, he will definitely, he will get black people to vote for him because they respect him, right? They do. Like, black people respected the shit out of Colin Powell. They absolutely did, to the day he died. So you could, as a Republican, he could peel off Democrats, like a lot of them. And again, he was a genuine dude. And Republicans would have supported him because he would have run as a Republican most likely, and he would have fucking won. It would have been a fucking cakewalk. Anybody on the Democratic side having to run against Colin Powell for president, it would have been like, dude, I don't really want to do this. Like, I'm going to get my ass handed to me, right? So he could have, but he even saw, by the way, just as a side note of the dangers of America, even he saw it as a danger as a black man to run for president. Mm-hmm. He's a Republican. Like, even him as a conservative was like, this don't feel like a good idea. So he was seen as universally a respected guy. The issue here is once he was lied to, he was like, oh, this is what's happening? I'm fucking done. Right? And he was done with the Republican Party. He was done with that bullshit. He left that administration and it was over, right? He was like, he came out hard. He came out fucking hard for Barack Obama in 2008. You know, he was just like, look, this is the guy, right? Like, I'm done with the Republican Party. No bullshit. This guy is like, he's serious. This is a serious young man. He's not fucking around. I think he'd be right for the country. That's a big fucking deal. For some Republicans who really supported Colin Powell's career and stuff like that, who saw that and was like, all right, again, his stamp on it is kind of a big stamp of approval, right? He was a big fucking deal. You cannot pretend that all of those things aren't true, and we also cannot pretend that he was instrumental in getting Americans on board for the Iraq War. Now, was he lied to and why he did that? Absolutely. He wasn't told the truth, right? Cheney knew he was filling this guy's head with a bunch of bullshit. He didn't see through it. That's his fault. I mean, you go with the intel that you have, right? You go to war with the team you got. So I think people on the left who are like lambasting this guy as like some like massive war criminal, I think is like, I understand why you believe that, but I think it's kind of bullshit. Like, I think it's a little bit of bullshit because I feel like you're purposely ignoring or forgetting a thing that is kind of instrumental in that, which is he was lied to, right? You want to get on Rumsfeld, Bush, Cheney, all of those guys, Wolfowitz and all those guys. Go to town. Those guys knew. Like, those guys knew they were lying to the United Nations and to the world community at large and to the American public when they were saying the shit that they were saying. Like, it's inarguable. For people on the right who are like, he was a perfect person and never did anything wrong and like all that other shit, that's bullshit. And to Donald Trump, who like randomly was like, yeah, fuck Colin Powell, he fucked up the Iraq War. Dude, you weren't even paying attention. And also you supported the war before you did. Like, knock it off.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, so like, I don't understand why people are like, oh, Donald Trump didn't support the war. Yes, he fucking did. He absolutely supported it. Until it was unpopular.
There's literally recordings of it. Like, he went on fucking Stern all the time back then. Like, you can hear him talking about this shit.
Yeah, like, but again, people don't follow up. So I say all that to say, here's my favorite Colin Powell story. I once saw Colin Powell speak at a speaker series, right? It was speaker series with a bunch of like left-wing people, right-wing people, same speaker series. I saw Peggy Noonan. I wanted to shoot myself in the fucking head. It was awful. It was awful. She fucking sucks. I've never seen someone.
Why did you subject yourself to Peggy Noonan?
It was a part of the speaker series I already paid for. But I did. But I did. Who was the guy? Who's the guy who got kicked out? Like lost the. Or I got to watch in that speaker series. I got to watch, which was amazing. Howard Dean debate Karl Rove. It was awesome. Howard Dean lit his ass up for 2 hours. It was amazing. It was amazing. But Rove is a very smart guy. Like he's not a dummy. But it was like like dude, like you are spewing a bunch of bullshit. But it was an interesting speaker series. But I saw Powell speak at it, and Powell tells a story which I thought was really kind of an amazing kind of American story. He talked about how he grew up in New York, and he is fluent. A lot of people don't know this. He's fluent in Yiddish, or was fluent in Yiddish, which is not a common language for a young black kid from like Brooklyn to be fluent in. And he tells a story that how he learned Yiddish is he went into like a furniture store or whatever in like a predominantly Jewish part of New York at one point, and the owner taught him like a few Yiddish words, right? Because he's a black kid. Like, why would he fucking know Yiddish? He would come near there or whatever, and the owner's like, come on in for a minute. And he taught Colin Powell, young Colin Powell, a couple of Yiddish words. And he would have Colin Powell go and stand near couples who are like shopping, in the store to overhear what they said, so that like if they were trying to like negotiate price, he would listen in, he would eavesdrop, go back to the owner, and like, oh, they're gonna offer this amount, like, because it was a place you could negotiate, which is like a massive stereotype, but it was, and so he would be like basically a spy for the owner, and like tell the owner like, oh, they're gonna only offer you $1,200 for this, and the owner's like, all right, got it, like, and so that's how he learned to be fluent in Yiddish. Is he like worked in this store? He ended up working in this store and being like kind of a spy for the owner, which is kind of a cool story. Like it's a kind of a lovely story. And it was funny. I was talking to my neighbors who were Jewish. I was talking to them, and I told them that story, and they were like, "I heard that. That's amazing!" Like they were just like, "That's so cool." It was like, yeah, it's just kind of a funny story. But like people really like that guy, and I don't think you should forget what who he was in his entirety. Right. It's the totality of a man that tells a story. Right. So, again, he doesn't get a pass on the Iraq War completely because he still supported it. But you cannot forget why he supported it. And I don't think he would have supported it if they were like, yo, we're just making this shit up. Like, you're just making it up.
Well, and that's the thing, like, that gets me is that you know me if you've listened to the show for a long time. I am firmly against lionizing really any political figures, just because there's everyone has warts that's associated with them, and I think that when someone passes away, that they should be evaluated warts and all. Like you have to take the totality of the man when it's there. But I think that there are certainly political figures that should be deserving of respect unobjectively from both sides based on the totality of their careers, and I think that Colin Powell would definitely fall into that camp. Like, even if you don't, agree with what he did in Iraq, or even if you don't agree with some stuff he did in during his service career, like as when he was, part of the Joint Chiefs and all that other stuff, and his involvement in the Gulf War, that's fine. But he was also, was a very noble person in American history. I think the thing that was said about Colin Powell was that he was the most accomplished person to not be the president of the United States,
right? Essentially.
So like he could have, like you mentioned, he could have easily been president had he decided that that's something that he wanted to do. So yeah, like I said, you can criticize Colin Powell you want. I find no fault with that, but taking some kind of myopic view on either side of the ledger, whether, like I said, you're far left and you want to just completely dismiss his entire career out of hand just because of the Iraq War, or if you're on the far right and think he did no wrong, or if you're on the extreme far right and now think he's a rhino just because he left your fucking party because he got fucking shit on by the Bush administration.
Well, and that he saw that the party was going absolutely fucking bonkers and made no sense.
Yeah, which he was right.
Yeah, he was 100% right. Yeah. Turns out, turns out he was able to see the giant flashing neon sign in front of his face. Also, we didn't mention this, but stop trying to use him as a reason to not get the COVID vaccine. He was 84 and he had fucking blood cancer. Shut up. Like, I hate anti-vaxxers so much.
I was so annoyed that, again, my first thought when I heard that COVID Powell, that Colin Powell passed away.
That's perfect.
My first thought when Colin Powell passed away, and I found out that it was COVID related, I was like, "Fuck!" Like,
here we go.
Going to take, just grab on this one fucking part of the story and just fucking pound that down our throats as to why, why we can't get the vaccine. And I'm frankly, I'm shocked. I haven't seen come to the surface the take that the COVID vaccine will actually kill you. Like, Colin Powell would have been fine with his cancer and 84 years of age had he not gotten vaccinated.
Brad, I feel like you haven't searched enough. I feel like the only reason why you haven't seen that take is because that's kind of you are so fucking lazy to do your research. It exists, sir. It absolutely exists. And I wish it did. All right, Brad. Tell people why you think that they should have a more fair and balanced look at the Holocaust.
Yeah. So
explain to the people your personal stance.
Yeah. So when Texas passed their idiot law about having to, have books and teach, things in schools that required multiple perspectives for controversial issues, essentially.
Right.
No one talked about like it was so focused on, the American history and critical race theory part of things, that nobody talked about the inevitable thing that would happen from this. And then it happened, and people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this happened." And I'm just like, I don't understand how you couldn't imagine this happen. So basically, there was a call that was leaked to the media, where the executive director of the Carroll School District in Texas was basically trying to train teachers on books that they should have in their classroom libraries to adhere to this new law that the Texas legislature passed. Because basically there was a parent who complained that a fourth grade teacher had a anti-racism book in her classroom. And so she was trying to make sure that no other teachers fell into the same trap. So she was saying, and this is a quote from her in talking about being, following the legislation. And I'm quoting now. And make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has that has other perspectives. And one of the teachers like, how do you oppose the Holocaust? And she's like, believe me, that's come up. What
just
is
make sure you have a book, like you could just pick up Mein Kampf, I guess. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, so what is the opposing
the German struggle?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even say that Mein Kampf would be like opposing the Holocaust. Like in Mein Kampf, like Hitler's like, yeah, like fucking.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah, like the opposing view would be like the Holocaust denial people. Like that's my question to her is, what is the opposing view of the Holocaust? Is it that it didn't happen? Is that the opposing view? Do you have to have books from right wing nutters that talk about how the Holocaust is fake? Apparently,
I mean. Did it happen, Brad? I mean, who knows, right? Like, there's only millions of people who died and, and had like tattoos and everything. Like, yeah, like those people, some of those people are still alive. Like, they're alive. Did they all come up with the same collective story? That's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess the only way that I can describe this is like, we're not teaching critical race theory to children because like, that's not a thing that's happening in schools. But this is,
right.
I think this is, in fact, Brad, critical racist theory. I think that's what this is. You're trying to teach the opposing view of the Holocaust? Like I said, by the way, when the story came out, I immediately sent it to my neighbor who's Jewish. I was like, yo, what's going on? He was like, dude, I don't know what the fuck
I just can't believe that.
It's like, Jesus
I just
Christ.
can't believe that she latched on to like the Holocaust as the example. Like, I feel like
because that woman is an anti-Semite. She's an anti-Semite. She's an anti-Semite. Like, look, you don't bring up like, but what about the Holocaust? You don't bring it up unless you're a fucking anti-Semite. The only people who think about the Holocaust not being real and front of mind are massive anti-Semites. That's it. You know how often I think about how the Holocaust is not real or fake? 0 times. 0 fucking times. Because I'm not a fucking anti-Semite. Only anti-Semites are like, hey, someone's like, hey, what's the temperature today? I don't know, man, but it's probably not as cold as it was on the time where people think the Holocaust happened, but totally didn't happen. Like, okay, John. Like, why are you bringing up the Holocaust?
This would be like the equivalent is if people in the 21st century believed like the earth was flat. Like that's like what the equivalent of this would be essentially.
Yeah, they play in the NBA. We know them. Or let me phrase it, they used to play in the NBA. Yeah. Maybe not so much anymore. The earth is flat. Jesus Christ. Well, as they say, the Flat Earth Society has fans all around the globe. Just say that a little slower next time. Just all
so again, the internet continues to be both the best and worst thing that has ever happened to human society, arguably.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you had discussed, you and I were talking about this offline. Like, why not just like, okay, you got like Christian classes or like religious classes. I think it's time to start teaching Satanism. Right, like
I feel like you have to, like you have to give the opposing view of Christianity
of everything,
and that's Satanism.
Right. Like,
Let's teach the children about the 10 core tenets.
I mean, they actually make a lot of sense. I feel like they shouldn't teach it.
As we discussed before.
Right. Like, I feel like they shouldn't teach it because it's like mad reasonable. Like, except for the one is like, use magic. And I'm like, all right, we were almost there, guys. Like, that's not real. Like, it's even like, don't hurt children. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how good it is. But the thing is, why stop at education? Why don't we do laws? Like, why don't we just, like, we have one law and then let's like discuss the opposing side as a legitimate other side of the law, right? Texas, they have an abortion ban. How about the other side of that? Like, if we're going to teach, we should teach that abortions are mandatory, right? Like, this is another option that we have. Everyone, every pregnancy, mandatory abortion, right? Like, because it's just as fucking ludicrous as their shit, right? So it's, to me, I don't understand. And by the way, I have to say that as a joke because apparently some people on YouTube don't realize, like, when we're talking about the story versus like the joke part of the story, like, because they got mad because
our wit is too dry.
Yeah, our wit is too dry. Like, somebody actually thought that Kyle Rittenhouse was hunting, like the story last week, that we thought that that's what the story was. I was like, no, that was the part of the story where we were joking because they were trying to use a hunting law as a reason. You know what? Never mind. Comedy is good. Wow. So yeah, like, I don't actually think that all pregnancy should end in mandatory abortions in Texas. That would make no sense. That's a joke. But yeah, the absurdity of having an opposing view to the Holocaust is fucking crazy. And if you say that, I automatically, and I would assume correctly, you're a massive anti-Semite and you should probably be ostracized. And you definitely shouldn't be a fucking teacher. Like, except for at the local Nazi school, I guess. But yeah, you shouldn't. No, if somebody says, well, you should teach an opposing view of the Holocaust, they should be fired immediately. Like, this is done.
And it's funny because I feel like that the teach the opposing view, like, edict is probably only going to go for certain topics. I get the sense,
of course,
that we're not going to hear a whole lot about the opposing view of, like, I don't know, like the Vietnam War, for what little, like, kids hear about that anyway, or the American Revolution, or, things of that nature. But I'm sure we'll hear all about it for the Civil War. I'm sure they'll talk about all about the other side of the Civil War.
Hey, Brad,
no doubt.
How about this? Here's a topic that will 100, speaking of the Civil War, 100% be talked about in a opposing view scenario. Slavery. Yeah, they were workers. They were just brought over, right? They needed jobs, so we gave them jobs. We didn't pay them, and we beat them. We killed them, but they had jobs. So you're welcome, blacks. So slavery. I mean, long has that been talked about in quote unquote opposing views in Texas textbooks, right? I am always amazed at Americans who love America so much that they are so unwilling to talk about, like, the dirt of America, like the real shit. Like, why? Why? If you love it, like, love it or leave it, man. Like, just talk about it. Look, there's a lot to love about this country. There is. There's a lot to dislike about it. Like, there is. I would argue there's more to dislike about it. But
there's not a country on the planet that doesn't have regrettable periods of history or things that they did or incidents or things of that nature as well. That's kind of the fucking deal with politics in general, like with having leaders and
human society.
Yeah,
right. Like,
that too.
Just human society. Like, look at Canada right now. Canada's so great. They got Tim Hortons. It's a lovely place and all that shit. Yeah, they can't stop digging up Native American graves at college sites. Like, they can't. They're like, there's dead Native American kids everywhere. Like, holy shit, we really fucked up. But they're dealing with it. You have to. You can't just pretend this shit doesn't exist. You can't pretend that, like, Canada was fucking perfect. Like, no. Like, it's not all hockey up there. Like, they did some dirty shit, especially the Native Americans. Like, they did.
I mean, for fuck's sake, like, if I bring this example up a lot because it's remarkable to me. especially to see how history has devolved and how jingoistic people are. But the fact that like Germany as a nation took to heart how fucking atrocious like the Third Reich was, and took huge steps to acknowledging that. Now, it certainly helped that, you know, things like the Nuremberg trials and things of that nature led to worldwide accountability, like yes. Kind of important, you know, piece of that. But the fact that they did not shy away from their role in that, and that they still, to this day, wear that with a huge amount of shame, is remarkable to me, because that is something that Americans could never fucking do when it comes to slavery, or could never fucking do when it comes to our treatment of indigenous people, or could never fucking do when it comes to, you know, opposing civil rights and things of that nature. Like, not ever.
No, we are a country full of people in severe denial. Severe denial. But part of that comes from the fact that we've been told that we are like American exceptionalism, right? Like, we are different by nature of just existing. So we can't, a lot of Americans, cough white, cannot imagine a scenario where they are even tangentially tied to people who would do horrendous things. They can't understand it. Look, I'll give you a recommendation of things, something to watch. And I personally, to you and to listeners and viewers. What is it called? I think it's called Exterminate All Brutes, which is on HBO Max. It's just about how basically when folks came over from Europe to the United States, like how they treated Native Americans and black folks, and just what they basically did to exterminate people who weren't like them. It is one of the most real fucking, like, it's like a documentary, but then it has some like narrative, like set pieces. Like they'll be like, this is what happened back then, because obviously they don't have footage. It is horrifying, but it's a documentary series. It's like 3 episodes. Exterminate All Brutes is the most realistic shit I have seen on not just American history, but sort of like European history as it's colonizing this part of the world.
Colonialism, basically.
Colonialism, right. Yeah. Like, you should watch it. Like, as a black person, you should watch it. As a Native American person, you should definitely fucking watch it. And as a white person, you should watch it, right? Because you really don't get to escape the realities of this shit. Like, this shit happened. It's not like, oh, it was a lovely time. No, they're just like, oh, you don't want to do what it said? Bam, shoot you in the fucking head. Like, these are documented shit that Europeans documented, right? Like, this is information that they documented and wrote down and fucking sent to other people, and like they wrote it down. And that's how we know about this shit, right? They weren't ashamed of it, right? This is what they did. So yeah, you should watch Exterminate All Brutes. Like, it's a powerful, like, 3-part series. Like, it really is. And it's not actually done by a guy I deeply respect as a documentarian. But it's very good. But it just gives this idea, like you're talking about, like, we don't want to acknowledge these things. Like, but you have to. Eventually you fucking have to. But we don't. We often don't want to. So yeah, this both sidesing shit, it's nonsense. It's nonsense in modern politics, and it's nonsense here.
And it's why we can't seemingly fully ever move past any of this stuff. Like, we still treat indigenous people like shit to this day. Like, we still treat black people like shit to this day. It's because we can't reckon with the country's history in doing these things. Like we institute half measures, and we think that somehow that's enough and that somehow fixes everything. You know, again, like the famous, like, you know, how could there be racism? We elected a black president. Well,
yeah,
one step.
Turns out you didn't exactly fix it, but, you know, turns out. Next up, you want to take this one? Joe Manchin shockingly cannot find 10 senators.
So the Senate was voted today on the Freedom to Vote Act, which was a kind of restructuring of the For the People Act, but notably, it had the full backing of all 50 Democratic senators, including Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema. And Joe Manchin was down with this law, essentially, or with this bill that they wanted to pass through.
Right.
And Joe Manchin has been telling us forever that all we need to do is come up with reasonable legislation that I guess he is the determiner of, being, the 50th vote in the Senate. And he would get 10 Republicans to vote on it along with us, because there's at least 10 reasonable people that are sitting over on that side of the aisle still. We all know that Joe Manchin's an idiot, and
we do. Yes.
Yeah, we do, and we knew that he wouldn't. But Joe Manchin kept banging the drum of, we can work together and do this thing. Well, Chuck Schumer brought the Freedom to Vote Act to the floor, and wouldn't you know it, all 50 Republicans voted against it, filibustering it and killing it before it even got a chance to.
Turns out.
Shocking news, I know. I was just as surprised as you are. It failed 49-51. The only reason that there was 51 is because Chuck Schumer changed his vote after it was clear that it was going to be filibustered so that it could be brought up later. So he was technically a no vote, but it's for procedural reasons, not because of
actual
vote for the fucking bill. Yeah,
Chuck Schumer didn't even vote for it. That'll be
so here is
scree on Twitter.
I'm waiting for the fucking far left to do that shit. Frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. So here's what I've determined now. I've determined that Joe Manchin doesn't actually want to make it easier for people to vote in this country. Like that's the only reasonable conclusion that can be drawn, because Joe Manchin, if he really truly cared, like if he truly thought that making it easier for people to vote was more important than holding strong to some archaic Senate procedural rule, if he truly believed that, then he would vote to at least have a carve out of the filibuster for voting rights, because this proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was wrong, and that there aren't 10 Republicans that are willing to work with Democrats in order to pass voting rights legislation.
Has anyone asked
him?
So
now, say again.
Has anyone asked him?
Thugs and News doesn't have credentials yet, so nobody has asked them that.
No one has the balls. We'll have to ride up on that fucking tugboat on our Sea-Doos and ask him directly.
Yeah, so now that it has been proven that he was wrong, and there is not 60 votes because the Republicans refuse to work with the Democrats. Like, again, it's not because Democrats aren't working to make the bill more moderate. It's because Republicans just refuse to work with them. Clearly, that is the fucking reason here. So now we have the minority party representing a vast minority of voters in the country able to essentially veto anything the Democrats want to do. So again, you have two options. You can either do something about the filibuster, or you don't actually want to do the things that you allege that you want to do, that you ran on, that people voted for you to do. That's the only conclusion that is reasonable to draw at this point. And I wish a reporter would have the guts to say that to Joe Manchin. Be like, how can you say that you are for, making it easier to vote when you won't do the things that would make it easier for people to vote in this country?
Just do a carve out, dude. Like, we're not saying get rid of the filibuster, you fucking coward piece of shit. Though you should do that.
I mean, we are, but we know you won't. So
yeah, we know you won't. Right.
Yeah.
But you won't do this. Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I'm not even going to remotely pretend to be shocked. We knew it was bullshit when he said it. Right. We knew it was bullshit when he said it, right? Look, spoiler alert. He knew it was bullshit when he said it, right? Like, he was just trying to buy himself time. Like, they're going to fucking like da-da-da.
So then why does he keep saying it? That's my question. Like if he knows it's bullshit, then why the fuck does he keep saying it? Like, does he? And a point was made, I can't remember by who, but on a podcast I was listening to, where by him coming out and saying that he's not going to vote to do anything to the filibuster, he's actually making it harder to negotiate with Republicans, to do what he wants to do. Because if you take away the threat that, hey, if you don't work with us, we're going to make your lives fucking miserable. Like, when you take that off the table, what incentive do Republicans have to come to you? Like if you're Joe Manchin, you're out there being like, look, I really don't want to do a carve out. I really don't want to, I think it's important that we keep to a 60 vote threshold for, advancing to debate. I firmly believe that. But look, Republicans don't want to negotiate with us. And I think this issue is too important to just leave it to procedure. So if Republicans refuse to negotiate with us in good faith, then I'm going to have no choice but to consider doing this. That's how you get Republicans to negotiate with.
Right.
By leaving it out there as a threat. When you close the door, Republicans are like, well, you're not going to do the thing that we're afraid of you doing. So why the fuck would we even talk to you about this?
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to save my comments for the next story because it's
well, I mean, we can
just jump right into it.
We can get right into it. So last year, when the
these two birds are right here for you, Brad. Go fuck yourself.
When the Democrats won the 2 Senate seats in Georgia, I guess that was this year. Well, when the Democrats won the 2 Senate seats in Georgia, we were potting, we were celebrating. TR was on with you and I. We were celebrating and having a good time.
We were drinking a lot.
We were drinking a lot, and I posited the theory, because we were like, oh, what can Democrats accomplish with 50 votes? Well, not much with the filibuster. And I was like, but here, I was like, what I could see happening? Like, I could see, like, Mitch McConnell, like, making Joe Manchin a crazy offer, because Joe Manchin's half a Republican anyway. So I could see Joe Manchin, like, switching to the Republican Party at some point during the next how many years, to give Republicans back a majority or something like that. And you guys got really upset with me, like you were upset that I even put the idea out in the ether.
Yes. No, I knew that it was definitely a possibility, but I hated that you said it out loud. I hate you for it.
You did. You did. So all I have to say in reaction to this is, dude, I told you.
Yeah.
Because
look, it doesn't feel good to be on the other side of this. Got to tell you, this is what it's like for all you other people when I'm right all the time. Oh my God.
There's a report that came out today in Mother Jones that said that Joe Manchin is planning on leaving the Democratic Party, and he has a two-step plan to bail out, because apparently the Democratic Party, he feels, does not represent his values anymore. Now,
they never fucking did. They never fucking
That's
did.
That's true.
They never did. Not in his lifetime. They never did. Fuck this
I
guy.
will say, to his credit, I guess, when asked about this report on today, and I'm going to quote him, and I'm going to do the best I can, because I'm reading this as the article says he was, like, how flustered he was getting. He says, quote, "I can't control rumors, and it's bullshit. Bullshit spelled with B-U-L-L, capital B. Bullshit."
Capital B. Goddamn right.
My thing is,
that's a hard response. Boy, you better not be lying, dude. Because if you are lying, you in a world of trouble. Like, they're gonna light your ass up in the press for that. Look, they're gonna light your ass up. Now, he don't give a fuck.
Now here's what's funny. So if he left the Democratic Party, if this did happen, if this isn't just a fucking horseshit rumor that somebody heard, he wouldn't become a Republican. Like, I think he would become an independent. Now,
that's how he spends it, by the way. That I never said bullshit. I'm an independent. Like, okay.
Yeah.
All right, Joe.
Now, what's interesting to me is that if he became an independent, I think that neoprogs would actually be, like, super excited about that, because they'd be like, oh my God, Joe Manchin just became as liberal as Bernie, because Bernie's an independent. So clearly when you're an independent,
you fucking man. Yeah, that's exactly right. He's going to be the new Bernie Sanders. Right. Him and Bernie, just like this. Meanwhile, Bernie's been lighting his ass up all week. Like, fuck this guy. I hate him. Like, no, he's not going to be
controversial.
Same kind of independent at all.
Controversial opinion. If Joe Manchin left the Democratic Party, I wouldn't really give a shit because Joe Manchin doesn't act like he acts like 25% of a Democrat anyway. So it's what are you actually losing?
Okay, that's the end of the free portion for this week's episode of Look Forward. Make sure you go to lookforwardshow.com/premium. Sign up for premium content. It's only $5 a month or $50 for the full year. You'll get the entire episode of this show every week. Normally it's about 2 to 2.5 hours, but you're only getting the first hour right now for free. So make sure you sign up. You also get the other premium shows in the TNP Studios network, like The Airing of Grievances, which is our Seinfeld podcast, No Time to Bleed, which is our action movie podcast, and of course, The Men with the Golden Tongues, which is our spy James Bond movie podcast. So check all those things out. Again, it's $5 a month or $50 for the full year. It's a pretty great deal, costs less than a cup of coffee, and we will see you guys next time.